What's up? I'm back. In this segment, I'm going to kind of breeze on the tree of life, a particular sephira or part of the tree or sphere of the tree, and science and the planet Mercury. Um, Many people don't really like. If you're familiar with the tree of life, every sphere of the tree of life is connected to a planet. So in a sense, you would have the first like the lowest Malakuf is Earth. Next one is Yesod, which is like the moon. Hood is like Mercury. Nizak, which is level 7, is like Venus. And in a way, this was done because, in a sense, each level of existence is controlled, in a sense, by the planetary energies. And in a sense, the planetary energies are the doorway to the next level. Um, Also, why this is as well, because through each planetary energy, through all the planetary energies, there's sciences or spiritual systems applied or attached to them. So, for instance, in the moon or your soul, level 9 type of spirituality, or if you're familiar with the Kemetic tree of life, Isis or Set sphere, the moon tends to be associated with more of lunar type magic or magic or spirituality that's more on the magnetic polarity. So Wicca, things like that. Voodoo is kind of a combination of solar and lunar, but I'm gonna put it as more lunar. Things like that, or even healing, being able to heal the physical body. Um, so in a sense, so even a lot of healing systems will fall under the lunar aspect as well, even though some are beyond the lunars. So in a sense, then you get to level 8, which is Hood, or the planet's Mercury, and that tends to be associated more with um, mathematics, numerology, and and Western science. Now, Western science is truly supposed to be science. True science or universal science is beyond just the eighth level of the tree, but the way Western science is constructed now, I should say. Now, the reason why this is important is because of this. Among the spiritual community, um, the spiritual community, from my perspective, tends to be, whether you talk about conscious community, new age community, the regular mainstream occult community, obviously they tend to vibrate more on the intuitive path. And a lot of them, and from my perspective, tend to be more Venus orientated in Nizak, level 7. And sometimes the spiritual community and obviously the Western science community clashes. And it's kind of interesting because if you look at the tree of life, the sixth sephir, which is Tabarif, where when you get to Tabarif level, some people associate with Christ consciousness, or that's the first time that your higher self is in full communication with you. So they call that the heart of the tree or the Messiah. In a sense, to get to that level, for the most part, you sort of have to conquer seventh and eighth. So you sort of have to master Hood, which is more the science logical aspect, and then the Venus feminine intuitive aspect. And this is very important because I think this is why the clash happens, because you can't really separate spirituality from science, even Western science. Many people who like to talk about showing and proving, a lot of them are using old scientific models. A lot of science has been proving spirituality for a while now. Um, and yes, there will be a level of spirituality that science can't prove because Western science is based on the five senses, which some people would call one sense. So a lot of when you're only using 20% of your perception, even your ability to observe, because that's what really science is, observing facts, is going to be distorted. But the reason why the hood aspect of the tree is so important, and when people look at the tree of life, they often neglect this this effort or this sphere because it's not really glamorous. But what they really don't realize is in the beginning stages, your ego only responds to mathematics and science. So in a sense, that's why in alchemy, you could talk about gold and silver, you could talk about salt and sulfur. It begins and ends with mercury. Because mercury are what merges or pulls the silver and gold together, or whatever substance you're trying to use, which is tend to be three things at once. Mercury merges them together, and then all of a sudden something new is created. So even at alchemy, to alchemists, they know it begins and ends with mercury. That's why in Hinduism, a deity associated with mercury, Ganesh, or even elephant, because really more the elephant energies. Um, that's the first deity that they actually give offerings to or they acknowledge, and then he opens up the rest. He opens up the doors to other deities. Because that's tell you how important Mercury is. Because if you look at it realistically, on the tree of life, if you get into the moon and the earth, Earth is obviously a planet, but we live on Earth, right? The moon is a planetary body, but it's not really technically a planet. It is, but it's not the same as the other planets out there. It's more like a satellite of Earth. So the first planet that we really encounter, even in our consciousness, past the Earth, is Mercury. That's telling you that, in a sense, if the hood or the eighth sphere of the tree, your Mercury aspect is strong, your ego responds to that, and then your ego could then apply the spiritual knowledge to it. And when you merge them together, you get a boom. And then your consciousness shoots up to the next level of the tree, which is Taparif. The reason why most spiritual people tend to be stuck between your Sid level 9 or level 7 and the Zag is because they don't have the Mercury or the Hood or the logic aspect to it. Because the logical mind is what decodes. And being that your ego only respects logic or numbers when it's in an unhealthy state, when your ego personality, or I should say, when the Hood angle or the logical angle is merged with your intuition, your consciousness expands. And that's why, in a sense, Western science is extremely important. And I'm going to start doing some videos on it, a lot of basics, because I think many spiritual people miss that. The fact that when you even, it's like this, life's not about competition, right? But a lot of science and spiritual wars, especially on the lower levels, if a spiritual person has 50% science, for the most part, it disarms the other person who's because I'll be real with you, most materialists are going to come from a science logical aspect. So I'm not gonna lie, I don't get into which one is more important, the logical or the intuitive mind. Logical mind tends to be more the male, intuitive mind tends to be more female. I don't get into that because I think they need to be merged together. But I do think if you had to pick one, put a gun to my head, I'd probably go intuition. But at the same time, we have to get out of the habit of picking which one is best in terms of like, okay, it's like two worse things, right? Two bad things. We pick which one is a little bit less worse. We have to get out of that habit because even in when it comes to intuition, you meet people who are beings, magicians who will be able to send you false information. Even the fact of when your elements are totally imbalanced, because most people in the matrix, your elements are totally going to be imbalanced. You can't even trust your intuition fully. That's where the logical mind comes in. The logical mind or a healthy ego is a bodyguard. So if you have a dream saying you're the king or queen of the universe, if you're just going on intuition, you might think that's true. When you can logically decode that, then you realize, well, maybe not. So a healthy logic is extremely important. And I think that's why that part of the tree of life is so kind of looked over and people kind of put down Western science. I think Western science is extremely important because if you have a good foundation in Western science, even astrology tends to be connected to Mercury as well. Um, Astrology, you can know certain things or you can understand certain events that happen without really being spiritually enlightened. So when an alchemist says it begins and ends with Mercury, I can see that because if you study astrology, even if you're not spiritual, you don't have psychic powers, you can predict certain behavior. So in a way, when you're coming up, right, the Mercury sciences, it's important because even if you're not spiritually aware, it helps you understand the universe. Science helps you understand why certain things are. Astrology helps you understand why things are. Numerology, which I even think is just as powerful, even more powerful than astrology, helps you understand why things are. And then as you begin to grow more spiritually, you start to put things together. Like most astrologers during retrograde periods, they'll run, right? Um, High magicians and alchemists would know certain tools or symbols to be able to block certain energies, negative energies from coming during retrograde times. So that's why magic and astrology and alchemy was hard to be separated. They were like sisters because in a sense you need all of them. And I think as a spiritual community, we, myself included, sometimes we tend to overlook science. But as I look over, I realize that science is extremely important. But I said most kids, when they're born, they're scientists. Most kids care why the sky is blue, why water is wet, whatever. Is there life on other planets? How many stars there are? Those are all things all kids ask. And as they get to be 10, 12 years old, they lose that because we come from a society that swagger is more important than intellect. But if you put intellect back, if you make intellect cool again, help you see that it could take control, it can help you understand your environment, and you could take control of your life, a lot of things will change. So science, astrology, numerology, extremely important. And I'm gonna start doing a little more science videos from this at this point. So until next time, peace.